All right, we are recording. Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's class. My name is Paige. I am a registered dietitian and culinary educator here for Boston Medical Center. And today's class is sponsored by WellSense Health Plan. So we're all very excited to have you all here. Today's class, we are making a really delicious recipe. And you're going to have to forgive me. I can't roll my R's very well. But we're making chile relleno, stuffed chili peppers with some cheese, really delicious. One of my favorite recipes, one of my really great friends in college had a family recipe she shared with me, which unfortunately I am not making today, but had exposed me to this variety of stuffed poblano peppers. So really delicious. I'm sure you may have seen this in different ways. I know lots of different recipes use different cheeses, some use meats, some use just cheese, different veggies. So there's lots of ways to make this recipe, but we're going to use the BMC recipe that's on our website. If at any point you have any questions, please feel free to unmute yourself, like I said, but we are recording. If you'd rather put your questions in the chat, I will do my absolute best to try to answer them as they come in. Sometimes I get a little distracted though as we're cooking. So, just give me a moment and I'll try to check the chat, but you're always welcome to unmute. I will ask that you stay on mute unless you have a question, just to minimize that background noise. Sometimes it gets a little tricky, if we can hear things in the background that might disrupt class. But other than that, thank you all so much for coming. We're just going to dive right into it. I am going to unspotlight myself. All right, so we just see our main screen here. All right, folks, so for this recipe, I went ahead and I did some prep before class because this recipe is a little labor intensive. It's got some steps and we only have an hour together. And so I want us to be able to try the final product together so we can go through the tasting. So I went ahead and I cooked my peppers already. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 poblano peppers here. They are a type of pepper, and it is a mild chili pepper. They are originated from Mexico. You can find them at your local grocery store. They are going to be over by the jalapenos and the bell peppers. They're generally not very hot, but occasionally they can have an unpredictable kick to them. If you've ever had shishito peppers, they remind me of that. But they do have more of a bell pepper texture. Fresh poblanos, when they're not cooked, are dark green and glossy, but you may have heard of them when they are dried. When they are dried, they are known as ancho chili. So you may have seen ancho chili powder before. That is some dried poblano pepper. I have my peppers charred here, which is what we were going for. We wanted them to get this nice coloring and we wanted them to cool off. So I'm actually going to set these to the side until we're ready to get to the step where we peel off this outer layer of the skin, because we need to make our tomato sauce. So we are going to go ahead and dice up some tomatoes, garlic, and onion. I actually ran out of onion in my last class. So one of the great things about cooking is sometimes we can pivot and use what we have on hand. I have a shallot on hand, which is a bit of a mild onion. It's like an onion garlic hybrid. It's going to work for this recipe. It's going to add that flavor. It's going to be great. If you have a red onion you want to use, you can. I would really recommend using that yellow or white onion just because they're a little bit more mild, but red onion works as well, whatever you have on hand. If you don't have any onion at all, you could opt for some dried onion flakes or onion powder just to be able to get that flavor in our sauce. So because this is an odd shape, I'm going to cut my shallot in half and I'm going to finely dice it, going through the top, keeping my hand flat, slicing it through long ways. And you'll have to forgive me, folks. Sometimes when I cook shallots or onions, it makes my eyes water. So I might need to take a step back so I don't get the waterworks going here. I'm going to go ahead and add them to my dish. Using the back of my knife. Just going to make sure I have the chat open in case anyone had any questions. Oh, perfect. Okay, no questions so far. Oh, again, just going to dice these. Trying to go down here. Hope I feel my eyes beginning to water. There we go. All right, final bits of this. Didn't do too bad here. Does anyone else struggle cutting onions because it makes them cry? You can go ahead and put that in the chat if you want to chime in, if that's something you experience. And I guess a better question is, has anyone found any tips or tricks to stop the crying? Because I've tried a lot and I don't think I have found something that works. Lisa says, yes, even if I put them in the fridge for a bit, I still cry. Yes, Lisa, I don't think I have found anything that makes me not cry. Oh, my friend Deborah knows that I love to put on my swimmer goggles. So I do have swimming goggles that sometimes I put on when I cut onions. I do not do that for class, though. You all would probably not want to come back to class if you saw me cut in my swimming goggles. But if I'm cutting a bunch of onions, I will actually get out some swimming goggles because I can't make it through that much onion cutting without crying. So don't knock it till you try it. If you're someone who suffers from crying from onions, definitely try your swimmer's goggles. Just doing a rough mint of my garlic here. Garlic sometimes makes me cry too. Not as bad as onions. That sulfuric compound, that sulfuric gas that's released from the cutting. I did hear, and I haven't tried this, and maybe someone can tell me if they've heard this too. If you light a candle next to when you're cutting an onion, it's supposed to it's supposed to absorb that gas. I have no idea. I don't think I've ever cut an onion next to a candle. So I can't say that I would have thought to try that, but I might have to. Right, we got our onion all nice. I'm gonna go ahead and put that in our dish here. Doing a lot of prep. All right, about 2 cloves of garlic, our small shallot. All right, now I'm gonna come in with my Roma tomatoes and give these a good chop. I'm just gonna cut the tip off where that thicker stem is and do a small rough dice here. We are gonna cook these down in a little pot to make our sauce. I do love cooking with Roma tomatoes when it comes to sauces. I think that they work really well for a sauce. You can use this little piece. I just like to remove that stem or stalk so that way it doesn't end up in my sauce. These don't have to be perfect dices, but as diced as you can. The smaller, the better. They might cook a little bit better. Perfect. So, as we finish cutting our tomatoes, does anyone want to share in the chat anything exciting they have going on this week? As we are, I feel like rolling into September really, really quickly. I feel like it was August 1st last time I looked at a calendar, but I think this time of year tends to go so quickly as we enter into the cooler temps and the holidays. Anyone got anything exciting going on this week? Oh, awesome. Okay, my friend Deborah says she's going to an NFL party on Sunday and she wants to bring this. Perfect. That's exciting. I love gatherings that, have anything to do with food, which most gatherings do. So that sounds very exciting, Deborah. I'll share. I have something exciting going on. I'm actually moving. I won't move till this weekend, but I'm moving into a house. Very exciting. I'll have to get my kitchen all ready for my next bout of classes. So that's something exciting I have going on. Um, and I have a birthday party. My niece I think she's turning 8. I forget. I have a few nieces. But yeah, I have a birthday party this weekend too, which this is definitely not something I would take for that. Because I think she's having a pizza party, but this would definitely be great to share at an NFL party, another small gathering. These are really, truly delicious. Once you make these, it's going to really open up a whole different world for you if you've never tried something like this before. These are really, truly a fan favorite at my house. All right, so now we have our tomatoes all diced. We have our onion slash shallot all ready. So we can go ahead. Ooh, sorry about that. I'm gonna grab a bigger pot because I have a smaller one here. And we're gonna start our sauce. Okay, bear with me as we shift. Where are you at? There you are. Okay. We're gonna shift a bit this way so you can see my pan. We're gonna go ahead and turn that on. Gonna add a little bit of oil. Gonna let that heat up and get the temp. Perfect. All right, we're gonna let that heat up and get the temp. Let's talk through our next steps. So we are going to go ahead, get this nice and hot. We are gonna go ahead and add our garlic and our tomatoes and our onions to this pan. And we're going to let it kind of cook down and reduce, get lots of flavor going there. Meanwhile, that cooks, we're gonna start to peel our peppers. They have cooled down significantly and some of the skin has already started to peel away. So we're gonna do that next. And we're going to remove the seeds of our pepper. Then we have to make our delicious filling. And I will tell you what, you can use a variety of cheeses for your stuffed poblano peppers, but I chose queso blanco and I had to self-grate it. And it looks like I have so many mounds of cheese right now. So I just thought you would all appreciate this beautiful large mound of cheese. So we have no shortage of cheese here for our stuffed peppers. And we're also going to make a filling with some spinach. This looks like a lot of spinach, but it's going to go down. Um, so no worries about that. All right. I'm going to go ahead and add these in here. Have that to the side. I'm just going to pull these off to the side so we can start peeling our peppers. We can multitask. Alrighty. So like I said, I charred these. I did these on the grill for about 15, 20 minutes, and I charred them until they got nice and black. And then I went ahead and I put them in this container and I covered them with a dish towel. You could do some plastic wrap, or you could use a paper bag, or I'm sorry, not a paper bag, a plastic bag, like a big gallon bag. I'm actually out of those, so I just opted for this. We wanted to capture the steam so that the skins would just peel right off, which you can see here that they are doing a pretty good job of peeling right off. If you were someone that was like, I do not want to do that, that looks way too tedious, you could skip this step. You just, might struggle when you're going to eat the pepper and have to eat this like outer layer. So this is really a nice step too. That's going to give it really good flavor. It's going to start to tenderize it. It's going to activate some of those flavor compounds because we put it under some intense heat. So this is definitely an important step that I wouldn't recommend skipping. Removing the skin off is going to make it a better experience overall. And look how easy it is. These are peeling right off. 2 more here. I did let these cool for about 15 minutes, which very much would recommend. You can see how easy they're cooling off without really steaming too much or being painful. If they are still too hot, they might hurt your fingertips to try to peel off.
Hey, Paige, how hot was the grill when you were cooking them outside?
Wonderful question. I would say that the grill was at about 400 degrees. I popped them right on around 400. I think it climbed up to close to 5, which I think it tends to do unless I have the lid cracked. But I just kept my eye on it. As soon as I started to see that dark color build, I would rotate them with my tongs. And then you would see them to kind of start to bubble and blister the skin up. Once they were kind of charred on all directions is when I took them off. So around 400 degrees. It'll probably be somewhere between like 350 and 500, I would say, because when you open that grill, it'll, depending on what type of grill you have, it'll go down and then it'll go up until you see that nice char on all sides. But you do want to keep an eye on it because, you know, the grill I work with in particular can keep climbing up to temperature. You don't want them to get burnt so much that you can't even peel the skin off of. So yeah, just keep an eye on them. It doesn't take too terribly long.
Did you put them right on the grate or did you have them on a pan?
Right on the grate.
Okay, great. Thanks.
You are so welcome. Great questions. Yep, we want them to be washed and completely dried right on that grate. So that way, you know, we want them dry so that they start to char and brown. If they're damp, that they'll steam. That water will evaporate and cause them to steam. All right. All of our skins are removed. Setting that to the side. These are looking great. Give this a stir. Now, because we have a lot of elements to this recipe that's going to need to be cooked, we're going to do our sauce over here together. We're going to make our foaming egg batter together. And then I'm going to actually try to bring the tripod over to the big stove since this needs to sit on the stove for a while when we actually fry them. So we might do some moving around. All right, this is looking really great. In another moment or so, I'm going to go ahead and put the tomatoes in. Now, what we want to do with our peppers, this is what they're going to look like. They have the top intact. We're going to make a little slit so we can remove the seeds, but we want to keep this top so that way we can use it to kind of anchor ourselves when we're dipping our pepper into things, and so that way we can stuff it. We're going to come in here, use a spoon, being very mindful not to break it. Pop this right in here. You could even use this knife to just kind of cut it out. Perfect. Get those seeds out. You can even rinse these if you want, but keeping that intact, just a little slit. Perfect. Second one, little slit down the middle, not to go down both sides, so just very superficially doing the top. Got a little paring knife here to slide it open. This one doesn't have very many seeds plucked out. I'm going to go ahead and put my tomatoes in here. This is starting to brown a little quicker than I want. I'm going to give it a good stir, make sure I can redistribute that garlic and the shallot. This smells phenomenal. All right, we're going to let this cook so that it cooks down. Let's keep removing our seeds. Okay, some of these already started to kind of open up on their own. I'm just going to give it a little extra cut there. My spoon go. Let's spoon these out. There we go. And again, keeping that part top intact. If you want to just remove it, because it's difficult for you, not a huge deal. It just helps to anchor your pepper so that way when you start to dip it into the flour and into the egg wash, you have something to grip onto. I will probably give these a quick rinse under the sink when I'm done, just since the seeds are sticking. See, this one's already got a hole open for me. Good. I almost feel like I'm carving a jack-o'-lantern when I do this. Scooping that out, dumping into this. All right, last one. Perfect. All right, I'm going to take these over to my sink really quick and just give them a rinse so I can get those extra seeds off. These are looking great. I'm going to make some room at my workstation real quick. Okay. Our sauce is looking great. It's going to keep cooking. I'm actually going to remove this pan from this area and I'm going to go ahead and put it on the stove behind me so we can make our filling together. So one last quick stir. You can see that they're starting to cook down. That's what we're looking for. There is a step in this recipe that requires us to actually blend this together in the food processor. We're going to see how low that these actually cook down to before I decide that. I sometimes prefer a chunkier sauce than a smooth sauce. So if it cooks down just, just a little bit of texture, I might skip that step. And that's just a personal preference on my end. But this is going to go over to my other stove. We're going to cook that on medium heat. Here comes our other pan. All right, we're gonna let this pan get up to temp and then we're gonna wilt our spinach. Peppers here so that they dry. This looks like a lot of spinach, but we all know as soon as you add it to some heat, that thing shrinks down real quick. This dish is a really delicious dish because we are getting some ooey gooey yummy cheese. We're getting some yummy texture from there. We're gonna get the soft cooked, really mild peppers and the breading we're going to cook with is a really cool breading that is more traditional with this recipe. We're going to do an egg foam batter, which is referred to potato. Sometimes I'm not very great with my pronunciation, so I apologize about that. But it is a cooking technique, especially for this recipe that uses an egg foam batter. And it's going to help create a light, fluffy, and tender coating that protects the pepper while frying. It's looking good. I'm going to add a splash of water so it steams it, and then I'm going to cover it. Beautiful. Anyone have any questions so far? There we go. Now it's really starting to shrink. We're almost done with our prep, and then we will get to making our egg foam base and making our actual stuffed peppers. I got to get my cheese ready to go in there. This is a really great recipe that would pair well with some rice and beans as a great side. I personally would like to pair this with some more protein. So I would probably, make some chicken on the side, or perhaps make my stuffing have some ground meat, some ground pork, just to up the protein content. We are getting, very little protein from the vegetables. We are going to get some protein from the cheese, but upping that protein will make this more of a balanced meal because we're getting a lot of fat from the cheese. We're getting some carbohydrates from the sauce and from the peppers. If you would like to pair it with some rice and beans also, that would be totally fine. I would just add some more protein as well, whether you just make sure you get enough beans or you incorporate some type of meat. That's just really going to help make this more balanced and satisfying. There's a question. Okay, the question in chat is, what is the single cooktop called? Yes, it's called an Elite Gourmet. It's from Amazon. It's just a plug-in stovetop burner. It's got a silicone top and it is electric. I do believe they have like a coil-based one on Amazon I used to use, but this is really easy for me with my demos, so that way I don't have to hover over the hot stove. But yes, Amazon Elite Gourmet. This get all melty. Just an update on our sauce. It's cooking down very lovely. Gonna let it keep going. All right, we have a question. How does the sauce smell? The sauce smells really lovely. It's really light, a really nice light sauce. I smell the garlic, very aromatic, but really light, not too heavy. Going in for the rest of our cheese. Almost all melted to get our peppers stuffed. I'm gonna move this to the side here. Okay. Let's stuff our peppers and then we will make our egg foam chop. All right, so I have separated the yolks from these egg whites. I have 3 egg whites here. I shot for 3. I like to make sure I have a little bit more than less just to make it easier. It's better for me to have extra than run out in this case. You want to make sure when you are doing that you don't touch anything greasy and that you make sure you don't leave any of the actual egg yolks in with the whites, or it won't come to those stiff peaks like we're going to try to achieve. All right, this is looking really great. This is melted down. It's still got a texture to it, which is great. A little firm. All right, turning this off. and stuff our peppers. Okay, I'm going to use a spoon. And be mindful that it's going to be pretty toasty. Might need to help flatten it just a bit. Perfect. Let's slide that guy to the back. See, it just fits right in there. And that's why we want to keep the top intact. This guy did slit up the back a little bit, which is okay. You wanted to add other vegetables to your filling, you could, or like I said, go for some ground beef, ground pork. It's there. You don't want to overstuff them. You want to stuff them just enough that you can get some good filling in here, but not so much that they won't close. I am so excited for these. These are a really special dinner, a really nice treat. And definitely a labor of love, but all worth it. Let's see, any of this could use more here. We can divide it back up. We'll go more back here. A little more there. All right, these are looking phenomenal. Right on schedule. All right, I think we're full enough here. A little extra topping. Okay, move this out of the way. Stuffed our peppers. Here's what our sauce looks like, but this isn't going to come until the end. I'm going to turn the burner down really low just to let it lightly simmer. And I'm going to actually add a splash of water just so it doesn't reduce down to a thick paste. I do want it to have a saucy texture. I personally think I'm going to skip the pureeing because I like a little bit more texture with my sauce. All right, now we make our egg foam batter. So because of what we're going to do now, I am going to actually mute myself so it's not super loud into the camera, but we're going to whip this until it forms stiff peaks. So just hang tight with me for about 5 minutes. I could take breaks if anyone has any questions to answer those, but I will mute myself while we go ahead and start this. All right, I want to take a moment to check in with you all here so you can see how it went from that really clear translucent to now we have some really fluffy white coloring here. I really mechanically manipulated these proteins. They captured air and they puffed up. So what we're looking for is for stiff peaks. So if I remove my beaters and they peak and they stay straight up, that is a stiff peak. These are peaking but then dropping. So we're not quite there yet. Almost. Right, let's check. Oh, just another few seconds and then I think we'll be good. All right, final check. Yeah, there we go. See how that guy stood up? That is a stiff peak. All right, now we have our batter ready. And again, the advantages of using this are just going to make it really light and fluffy. And oftentimes, when you're using an egg foam batter like this, it's going to create a really light, crispy coating, and it's going to help the pepper not absorb so much oil as it's being cooked. All right, so I am going to get our next phase set up as we go ahead and cook our peppers. So bear with me as I get the big cast iron over there set up for our sauteing, our frying. And then we're going to go ahead and we will dip our stuffed chilies and our flour and our egg batter and put them in. So bear with me just a moment. All right. Hang tight. Let's get this propped up a little more. Maybe this. There we go. All right. Hopefully that looks okay to everyone. Everyone can still see everything. I'll move this in a little more. We're getting our pan ready, nice and hot. There we go. These require a little bit more heat than my small plug-in can manage, so we had to go to the big one. Right. Some tongs, stuffed peppers here, flour, egg mixture. All right. we are going to start by taking one of these chili peppers and we are going to dip them in the flour. Then we're going to dip them in the egg white mixture. So I'm going to see how well I can do this by showing you all these steps. So we're going to go ahead, taking the pepper into the flour. I'm making sure that it's all closed. I'm going to rotate it as best as I can. Perfect. All right, here we go. Into the egg foam batter. You might need to have your hands help a bit here. Dripping it by the top. Perfect. This one was extra stuffed. All right. Placing it right in. Right, you can hear it slowly begin to crackle. It's a good sign. Right, gonna go in again. Flour. Egg foam mixture, which actually let's use this spoon and see if that helps. There we go. Perfect. There we go. Right, these are looking great. I'm just gonna do 2 at a time. I have this on medium to medium high heat. Going with the flip. Nice golden. Nice golden. These probably could have went a little bit more, but I can flip them again. Sometimes it's hard to know with that first batch if it's too long or too short. All right, I do see we have a question in the chat. Can you use this egg white method for things like chicken and other things? Yeah, yes, you can. You can use this for chicken. Um, it's a really nice way to create like a light, crispy crust for fried chicken. It's going to be very different than your traditional egg wash and flour breading, but you might have to play around with it, especially if you're going to dip it in something like flour first. That might help. Flip. See, we're getting a nice golden crust on these. Yeah, really nice. Really nice and light. All right, and we're gonna go ahead and add these when they're done frying to a plate with some paper towel to absorb that extra moisture. All right, first two done. Let's go ahead and do our last two, and then we'll do our taste test because we still have a little bit of time left for that. Turn my heat down a little bit. Just getting right up in there with my hands. There we go. All right, second pepper. Rolling around in the flour. All right, so we have another question. Does the flour egg white mixture hold the cheese spinach stuffing well enough so it doesn't spill out, or did you close the pepper? Yeah, so I kind of have to like physically close the pepper because these peppers are really loose because they were cooked and they don't have their skin on them anymore. So you kind of just have to hold them shut and force them to stay shut as you're flipping them. The cheese mixture kind of helps, but again, it'll be really easy to flop right open if you're not careful. Like that one's still a little open, which is fine as long as it's not spilling out. Move this down a bit more. There we go. Back, I lost this content. There we go. This one's looking real nice. This guy is probably ready. Oh, oh no. There we go. I'm gonna grab that filling that fell out. Aside, this is looking good. All right. Final peppers. To grab this filling. Place it on top. Perfect. All right, hang tight. Let's go back. All right, so we got about 6 minutes left of class. Let's go ahead and do our final taste test. All right, so here is our sauce. See, I think this is the perfect texture the way it is. I like a little chunk, me personally. Up close. Okay, final product. Oh, where are we at? There we are. Beautiful. I'm going to grab a little knife and a fork, and let's do our taste test. This looks so great. Cut, making sure I get all right. Here's our bite. This is delicious. Really, really just the lightest breading. This cheese is rather sturdy, not as melty, but I'm going to be honest, I prefer it. It kind of holds this dish together a little better. The sauce is really great. I'm getting a hint of spice, probably from the pepper. Really, really flavorful. And again, like this cheese is a little bit more sturdy, less melty. This is really great. I definitely would love to pair this with some rice and beans and maybe even do some ground chicken next time. I don't think I would change anything about this. If you wanted to try Monterey Jack cheese instead, which will be a little bit more loose and melty, you could. But I think that this staying together is actually more helpful. It makes this easier to eat, and it's still just as cheesy and delicious. All right, folks, before anyone goes anywhere, I am just going to conclude class so I can conclude the recording. So just stay on for a few. Thank you, WellSense, for sponsoring today's class.